Hi, Fashion Campers. I'm so disappointed we can't see each other in person this summer, but I wanted to introduce a couple projects that you might be interested in doing this summer on your own. And keep in mind, if you have questions about this or any project you're doing on your own, feel free to email me. We can set up a private Zoom or just talk on the phone, or I'm happy to help you with anything you're working on this summer. The first project that I'm going to introduce is a mask, and I know you guys are probably tired of masks, but I think we're going to be wearing them for a long time, so it's a good project for a couple reasons. The mask that we're doing has a lot of good sewing details for you to be working on, as well as you know, even if your family has masks, you can give them to your neighbors or your grandparents, or just have an extra one, you know, which is nice too. And it doesn't take a lot of fabric. You can even, you know, cut up an old blouse or scarf or something if need be, so there's not a lot of supplies that you'll need. I'm gonna have attached to this email, I believe, is a link to the pattern. I'm gonna send you the pattern for our mask that you can print out and use. And then what I do is the front is one fabric and the lining, I'm calling it, is another. You can use two fabrics, you can use one fabric, whatever you'd like to do. You can kind of see the lining has an opening that you can put a filter or something in. And the self, or the front that you see, just has one piece of fabric at the bottom. Then there's a seam here, and there's a small piece of fabric here that kind of folds over and above your nose. And then it's easier to see on the inside. There's a dart here on the lining, on the bigger part of the two-piece lining, as well as you can't really see it, but there's a dart here on the self that just kind of helps shapes the fabric and keeps it close to your face, under your chin. Okay, so what you'll do is cut in whatever you decide to use as self. You'll cut one of these bigger pieces, one of the nose pieces, we can call it. Make sure when you see the pattern, you cut in the notches at the edge of the pattern and the edge of the fabric. That's going to help you assemble the mask, as well as in the back, you know, for the lining, you'll cut, there's a long piece and a short piece, and this kind of, there's like an underlap here, you can kind of see, so you can slide something in. This top nose piece is the same pattern piece, just cut twice, once for the lining and once for the self, and then the lining you'll have a big piece and a small piece. For the straps that kind of go around your ears, you can use anything you have around the house. What I use is not even elastic or stretchy. I do knot it, which encourages people to, you can change this knot and make it fit your face perfectly. But shoelaces, people have used hair things, you know, you should you know, I would imagine you can find something around the house as well to use as your strap. The strap, I usually cut them 12 inches long. Okay, and my assistant, Josephine, who a lot of you know, is going to go step by step in the sewing of this mask. I just wanted to kind of show it to you and say hello, and let's see, I wanted to talk about the dart, and I also wanted to talk about the understitch, which you might be able to see here. There's an understitch at the edge of the lining that helps this become a nice firm edge. So that's the other sewing technique that I think is really important, and a nice detail to kind of master with the sewing of this mask. So good luck. Again, I miss seeing all of you. Good luck with this project. We will be doing another one soon, and let me know if you have questions on this or anything you're working on. And I hope in the midst of all that's going on, you're having a great summer. Okay, thanks, bye.
Hi everyone, my name is Joe and I'm an intern at Lemon Twist Fashion Camp, and I'm going to be teaching you guys how to sew the mask at home. So this is what the finished mask is going to look like. There is a little flap on the inside so you can add a little filter in there if you want extra protection or things like that. On the back and the front there is a dart just so it like hugs your face or like goes to your face better or whatever. And then the front and the back have a extra panel so that it covers your nose. And yeah, so that is what I will be showing you how to make today. So this is the front piece that you're going to cut out. So you're going to cut it out and then you want to mark your notches on this. And you don't want to notch in too far because you're only sewing a 1/4 inch seam allowance, so you don't want to notch in too far so the notch is in the final seam. So you'll just go in and notch a little bit just like that with your scissors, with the tip of your scissors. And so these 3 notches on the top are important because this is where you're going to line up the nose piece to make sure that it's lined up and the right way. And then these 2 notches on the bottom are going to be so you know where your dart is going to fold over. So if you don't know what a dart is, it's indicated by 2 notches and a dot. But you don't want to put a dot on the right side of your fabric because you'll see it on the other side. So what you do is you find this circle and then you'll put a pin in the middle, flip it over, and then you'll just take a piece of chalk or pen or anything you want and just put a little mark right where the pin is going through. And then you can flip it back over, take the pin out, and you have your marked dart, and then you'll know where to sew. So that is the front piece that you'll cut out. So this is the nose piece, and if you're going to use the same fabric for the front and the back, you can cut 2 of this, but if you're going to use a different fabric, which we normally do that, but you don't have to, you can cut 1 for the self and 1 for the lining. Now for this, the notches are also important because the 3 here, as you know, are going to line up with the top of the front. And the 2 in the back are going to line up with the back of this one so that they are in line and you're going to have an even mask and they'll be together in line. So that is what the nose piece is going to look like. So these are the 2 back pieces. You're going to cut 1 of each and making sure that they're both face up, just so that the 2 pieces, both of the right sides, are facing upwards. The notches here are the same as this front piece, it's just cut like right here. So there'll be 2 notches here that you'll cut and 1 notch here. This notch here is really important because it tells you which side is the top and which side is the bottom, because these are it kind of looks the same if it gets flipped around. So you'll know which part is the top with this notch. And then you'll do the same thing here. You'll notch the 2 bottom pieces and then put a little mark on the other side of the fabric with a pin. And so that is for the back lining pieces. Okay, so the first thing we're going to sew is the dart on the front and the back piece. So first thing you'll do is find your 2 notches that you've already made, and then you will fold it in half, making sure that the notches are in line with each other like that. And then you'll find your dot, and then you'll make sure that your dot is folded in half. And then you'll put it in your machine, and you're going to want to put your needle right where the notches are, like that. And so you're going to do a diagonal line going off the edge. You don't want to back tack at the end because you need to tie it by hand so there's no like bump in the fabric. So you will do a few stitches and then back tack and then do a diagonal line. And then once you see your dot, you know that you only have ½ an inch more to go. So you'll go down, and then I see my dots right there, and then I'm just gonna go ½ an inch back there, and then I'm done. And so you'll take it out of your machine. And then you want to cut, leaving a few, like an inch of string left, so you can tie a knot by hand at the end. So you'll just tie a few knots so it's like a back tack, but not really. And then your dart will be done. So then this is what the finished dart is going to look like. So the next thing you'll want to do is press your dart over. So you can either press it to the right or the left, it really doesn't matter, but you'll just use your iron and press it over to one side, trying to like press or pull your fabric apart a little just so it really gets nice and pressed open. And then you can go back in again on the front and just press it like that. And there is your final pressed nice dart. So this is one of the back flaps, and the back flaps need to be clean finished on the edges. So what you'll do is you will turn the side. So what I do is I just fold it over once a little and then iron it. You fold it over 1/4 inch and then you iron it down like that. And then you take it and then just fold it over one more time, another 1/4 inch. Just like that, so it's nice, clean finished on the edge, and then you will sew it. So you also want to make sure that you're folding it onto the wrong side so the right side is nice and clean finished like that. So now you're going to just do a seam and to clean finish it. So we just finished this piece here, and this is the other back piece, and so we just did the same turn here and the same dart as the front piece. So we just press this over to one side as well. And so now we are ready for the next step. So now it's time to sew the nose piece onto the front. So what I do is I find the notch at the very top, and I have to line it up with the notch on the self piece. So you line those notches up, and then you take a pin or a safety pin or whatever you have, and I like to put the pin lower than where I'm gonna be sewing so I can keep the pins in as I go. And so then I'll move on and I find the notches, line up the notches again, take a pin, and pin it on, just like that. And then on the other side, line up the notches and pin it. So now you're gonna wanna sew it at 1/4 inch. And if you don't know where 1/4 inch is on your machine, what you can do is you can take a ruler or a tape measure or something and find a line and put it where the needle is, and then you measure 1/4 inch away from there. So on this machine, the 1/4 inch is right against the presser foot, right there. So you'll line up the edges, making sure that they're in line, and put it in at 1/4 inch. And then you'll just sew along the line. And so once you're done making sure you back tack at the beginning and the end, you'll want to trim your threads so it's nice and clean, and then we're going to press the seam open. So what you want to do is grab a ham or something like this. If you don't have an iron or one of these, you can use your fingers and just kind of press it down with your fingers instead. But if you do have an iron and it's a place where you can iron, you'll want to just press open the seam like this, and then get the nose of your iron into the seam so you can press it open. So then this is what a nice pressed front will look like, and the inside will be nice and pressed open. And now we will go on to the lining pieces. So the back lining pieces is a little bit trickier because you have this opening here. So now the notches come in handy. So you'll find the notch and making sure that it's on the top, and then you can have it either way, but I usually like it so the long piece is on the top. So you can put that on top like that, so they look like one piece. And so you will take your nose piece, making sure that it's right sides together, and you'll find your top notch again, and then you will line the notches up and pin that. And you can do this side first and then pin it to this side. So you'll line your notches up and pin them. So you have the one side, and then you want to bring this in a little until this notch on this piece lines up with the notch on the back piece. And then you will pin that together. And then you will sew a 1/4 inch all around again. And so what I like to do just for extra security is flip it over, and so you don't want this piece to be falling down or anything like that. So you can line these up nice like that, so everything's in line, and then just add an extra pin so you know that it's not going to be falling around, just like that. So now that you have this finished piece sewn, you will press it open just like the other one. So now that you have the front and the back sewn, you're gonna sew the top edges together. So you're gonna flip one around just so you are sewing right sides together, and then you will find the notches on both sides and line them up and pin it. Just like that. And then find the other notch, line those up and pin it. And then you can also add an extra pin on the edges if you want as well. And now we're gonna sew this 1/4 inch all around. So now that you sewed the top edges together, we are going to do something called the understitch. So you don't want to press it open first. So the understitch on the finished product is going to just look like this on the wrong side. And the purpose of the understitch is to make sure that it's a nice clean edge on the top. So now we're going to do the understitch. So for the understitch, you're going to open up your mask and push over the seam allowance onto the lining side. You can even iron this over if you want to do that. So you'll want to do a stitch right alongside the edge of the lining, but not going over onto the self. So you'll put it in your sewing machine right at the edge of the lining, and then you can use your fingers to feel for the seam allowance so you know that it's getting caught in the stitch. So here's what the finished understitch is going to look like, making sure that you're back tacking at the beginning and the end. And you can go on the other side and looking to make sure that you got all of the seam allowance in your stitch. So now we're going to sew the bottom edge together. So the first thing you'll do is find the darts and pin those together so the darts are even with each other, and then you can pin the edges together. And for this flap, you'll pin the edge onto the side so the edges are even. And then I like to add an extra pin where the flaps cross over just so they don't get all wonky. And then you can do a 1/4 inch seam allowance along the bottom. So now that you've sewn the top and the bottom, we're ready to flip it inside out. The sides are still open, so you could flip it out through there, but you could also flip it out through this flap if you want to as well. So now that you have flipped it inside out, we're going to give it a little bit more shape. So on the top, since we did the understitch, we can have a nice crease on the top and just use our iron to iron it out flat on the top. So now the top is nice and flat and a clean edge. But since the bottom doesn't have the understitch, we have to use a chopstick or anything that has a nice edge to it, like a pen or a pencil or anything like that, to push out the seam allowance. So you'll just put your chopstick through one side and then push against the seam so it gets nice and out to the edge. Then once you pushed out your seam to the edge, you can iron out. Let's see. And now your mask has a lot more shape to it. So now we're going to clean finish the sides and put on the straps. So to clean finish the sides, you'll want to fold in the edge all the way around, making sure that it's about a 1/2 inch, and then squeezing the side so it stays taut. And then you'll just take your iron and iron it down so you'll have a nice clean edge to put your straps in. So then you'll cut out your straps. We usually do 12 inches because it's just a good amount, and then we can tie it or like readjust it to fit your head shape or size. But you could use whatever you want. You can do 4 long straps so you could tie it around your head. You can do whatever you want. This is up to you, but we usually just do 12 inches. And so we'll put one side of it in, and we don't want to put in too much so then it gets too short. We'll just do like a 1/2 inch and then put the other side in just like that. And then making sure you're holding it taut, you'll bring it over to your sewing machine. I like to do it right on the edge, but you can do 1/2 inch seam allowance if you want to do that. And then you'll just do a seam down the side. It might be a little bit thick going over this one bump right there, but you can pull it through. And then you have your one strap sewed on. So this is what a finished mask will look like. I tied one knot on the side, so I'm just gonna tie the other knot. So it's just like a little knot that you can change and untie if you want. But yeah, here's what it'll look like.